Hi everyone and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be counting down the top 5 worst albums in my collection. So these are 5 bands that I actually really like, but the albums are definitely not their strongest. And to give you a bit of background, when I was a younger man, the only way I could get new music was by buying it on CD. So back then we didn't have Spotify, we didn't have YouTube. So if a band you liked released a new album, you couldn't just download it, see what you think of it before you actually go out and buy the physical copy. You had to take a punt on it and go out and buy the physical copy. And the problem with that was the price of CDs was really expensive back in the early 2000s. So for example, this CD here, it was retailing for €19.99 and it was reduced to $14.99, but still extremely expensive for a new album that may not be a good album, and that's the case with these ones. So I'm just going to run through the 5 worst albums in my collection and we'll see what you guys think. So coming in at number 5 is the album Up by R.E.M. So I'll give you a little bit of background on the album. Up is the 11th studio album by American rock band R.E.M. It was released on the 26th of October 1998 through Warner Brother Records. The album was the band's first without drummer and founding member Bill Berry, who retired from the band in October 1997. In its place, R.E.M. used session drummers such as Barrett Martin from Screaming Trees, while also utilising drum machines. The album was produced by Pat McCarthy, making it R.E.M.'s first album since Life's Rich Pageant in 1986, not to be produced by Scott Litt. The songs on Up display a much larger electronic music influence than previous R.E.M. material with extensive use of keyboards and drum programming. So, in my opinion, this album is very boring. There's only 2 songs that stand out for me, and they're the 2 hits that I heard on the radio back when it was released. There's song number 5, At My Most Beautiful, and song number 11, Day Sleeper. But the rest of the songs, to me, are just a complete bore. Really nothing stands out here. Electronic drums does not work with R.E.M.'s style. So my advice, if you see this album, you're thinking of picking it up, don't bother unless you want to have the whole R.E.M. collection. But it's not an album I'm going to be reaching for very soon anyway, that's for sure. Okay, we'll move on to album number 4. So album number 4 is this one, Oasis, Standing on the Shoulder of Giants. So I'll give you a little bit of background on the album. Standing on the Shoulder of Giants is the 4th studio album by English rock band Oasis, released on the 28th of February 2000. It was the band's first album under the new record label Big Brother Recordings. In the year preceding the album's release, Alan McGee closed Creation Records and Oasis had lost 2 founding members, Bonehead and Guigsy, and hired new producer Mark Spike Stent to replace Owen Morris. So as you can see, a lot of changes in the band. Now, at this time, I was a big Oasis fan, as were a lot of my mates in school. We were really looking forward to the new Oasis album. And then when it came out, because we were young, we went through, listened to the album, thought it was really, really good and really strong. Went to see them on tour when they played Dublin. And of course, it was a great experience being a young teenager. But on reflection, many years later, this album does not stand up to the other Oasis material, and there's loads of factors for that. Noel was going through a strange kind of time where he had given up the alcohol and the drugs, so he was in a very vulnerable state. I think he was having trouble in his marriage as well. Liam was having trouble in his marriage. Bonehead and Guigsy had left the band, so there was new members come in. Andy Bell came in on bass, and of course Gem Archer on rhythm guitar. They had a new label, which obviously comes with its own complexities. And then the producer they brought in to produce this album was Mark Spike Stent, who was up to that point a pop producer. And he had produced stuff like the Spice Girls, Madonna and Massive Attack. So all in all, this album is not great. There are some standout songs on it. I'll just look at the track listing here. I'm a fan of Who Feels Love, but other people may not think that's a great song. I know that songs like Gas Panic and Sunday Morning Call are highly rated among diehard Oasis fans, but they're average songs at best. And then you just have loads of filler. here. You've got Put Your Money Where Your Mouth Is, Little James, which was the first track that Liam was credited with as a songwriter. Not a great song. Yeah, Where Did It All Go Wrong, track number 7. Again, not great. I Can See a Liar, track number 9. Not great. So, not my favourite Oasis album by a long shot. It's not great. And it was a transition for the band. I think their later material with the newer members is actually better than this. But still part of the Oasis discography. So that's song number 4. Or album number 4, should I say. Okay, now we move on to album number 3. So for me, album number 3 in the worst albums in my collection is Velvet Revolver, Libertad. So Velvet Revolver, basically a band made up from former Guns N' Roses members. There was Duff McKagan on bass, Slash on lead guitar, and Matt Sorum on drums. On lead vocals was Scott Weiland, and on rhythm guitar was the Wasted Youth guitar player. His name escapes me at the moment, but I'll just run through some background on the album. So Libertad is the second and final studio album by American hard rock band Velvet Revolver, released on July the 3rd, 2007. The name is Spanish and translates to liberty or freedom in English. According to a 2007 interview with Rolling Stone, along with the Stone Temple album's Core and the self-titled 2010 album, Libertad is the only one of 3 albums lead singer Scott Weiland wrote while sober. Well, that's interesting. So this album, to me, I was a big Guns N' Roses fan. I liked the first Velvet Revolver album, and then this album came out, and as I showed you earlier, I went to buy it. It was on sale for €14.99, so €15 for the new album. I hadn't heard, they might have released one single that was on Kerrang, but I hadn't heard much about the album apart from that. Bought the album, terribly disappointed. Now when the band went on tour, they played Dublin on this album to support this album. I went to see them, great show. They played some Guns N' Roses stuff, some Stone Temple Pilots stuff. They played obviously a lot of songs from the first album, and they played some songs from this album. But this album, Libertad, does not stand up to Contraband. It's like 2 completely different bands. The songs are not great. They seem like they're half-baked, rushed in the studio just to get some material out. There's no songs that I would think even stand out as decent songs. They're all very below average songs for this group of musicians. Another point on this one, this album was actually produced by Brendan O'Brien, who is an absolute legend. If you like alternative music, you'll probably know of Brendan O'Brien's name. So he produced and recorded stuff with Red Hot Chili Peppers, Stone Temple Pilots, Pearl Jam, Rage Against the Machine, and Soundgarden. I love Brendan O'Brien's style. I think he's an amazing producer, and like in terms of production, mixing, engineering, the album doesn't sound bad, but the songs just aren't up to the standard that it should be. So it's unfortunate. It's a missed opportunity from Velvet Revolver there, but not an album I go to very regularly. Okay, we move on to the next one there. Album number 2, in terms of the worst albums in my collection, is Stereophonics, Just Enough Education to Perform. Okay, so we'll run through some background on the album. Just Enough Education to Perform is the 3rd studio album by Welsh rock band Stereophonics, released on the 11th of April 2001. The album topped the UK charts with 140,000 copies sold and spawned 3 top 10 singles in the form of Mr. Writer, Have a Nice Day, Step on My Old Size Nines, and Handbags and Glad Rags. The album's title comes from a line in the song Mr. Writer. Okay, very good. So look, this album to me, Stereophonics' first album, Work Gets Around, excellent album. Second album, Performance and Cocktails, probably the album that broke them. Loads of hits, nice rock album, sounded really good for the time. And this album just fell way short, their 3rd album. I went to see them on the tour for this album. They played Slane Castle in Ireland, and they were very average. But this album was not great. I'm just going to run through like some of the details on the album. So it was recorded by Steve Bush. He was the producer. I honestly never heard of him. I don't know any of his material, not familiar with him as a producer at all. And just running through the album, so it opens with a song called Vegas Two Times, which has a great guitar riff at the start. So you listen there and you say, okay, this album has potential. And then it just goes into this like mundane, semi-country indie kind of vibe, which I don't like. So we'll talk about Mr. Writer first. That's a decent tune, and it's fine. There's no issues with Mr. Writer. But then songs like Lying in the Sun, Step on My Old Size Nines, Have a Nice Day, Nice to Be Out. These are like half-baked country songs. So I don't know. They don't really fit into Stereophonics' vibe. And like some people still to this day like Have a Nice Day. It's probably one of the worst songs in the last 50 years to get on the singles charts. So I don't know. Different people have different tastes in music, but for me, this is definitely Stereophonics' worst album. I know it's rated highly by some people, but not by me. I don't enjoy it at all. Okay, now we're coming on to album number one. So, album number one, this is the worst album in my collection, and it is Metallica, Saint Anger. So just to give you some context, I'm a massive Metallica fan, and when I was young, Saint Anger came out, so I was very excited to go get the album, and then when I heard the album, I was disappointed, and there's many reasons for that. Suppose start with the drum sound. The snare sound is so bad, I don't enjoy it. I have to say it's hard to listen to this album with the snare sound being so bad in this. We've got Jason Newsted's obviously left the band, so the band are in a bit of flux. Bob Rock plays bass in it. I've no issue with that really, to be honest. There's no guitar solos in the album, which is a major issue for me as a guitar nut. The vocals sound bad, they sound untuned. So all in all, production on this album is very poor. And to be honest, there's a couple of songs that have good riffs. There's Frantic has good riffs, Some Kind of Monster. My World has good riffs in it. But I think there's probably a decent album buried in there somewhere. But because of the sparse production, they didn't bring that album to the forefront and give it the best chance. So for me, Saint Anger, not an album I reach to very often, even though, as I said, I'm a big Metallica fan. Okay, so there's my top 5 worst albums in my collection. I'll be interested to hear what you think. Do you agree? Maybe you think some of these albums are the best albums by the band. If you do, let me know in the comments. Or if you have the top 5 albums in your collection that you think are the worst, let me know what they are in the comments. I'd really appreciate if you like and subscribe. Trying to grow the channel here, trying to create a community where we talk about music and albums and all things guitar and rock. So yeah, I'll be doing more reviews over the next few weeks, so keep tuned and I'll talk to you on the next video. Bye now.